Marcus Chen stood in the parking lot of the suburban Italian restaurant, his hand gripping his car keys so tightly they bit into his palm. Behind him, through the glass windows, he could see her, the woman his sister had insisted he meet, still sitting at their table, probably wondering if he was coming back from what he'd claimed was an urgent business call. But Marcus wasn't going back. He'd made it exactly 20 minutes into the blind date before every instinct told him to run. And Marcus Chen always trusted his instincts. Ouch, how you built a billion-dollar tech empire by 35, while raising a daughter alone. You learned to spot incompatibility fast, cut losses quickly, and never waste time on situations that wouldn't work. This wouldn't work. She was too ... something. Too polished, too career-focused, too much like the high-powered executives he dealt with every day who saw his daughter, Emma, as an inconvenience to be managed rather than a child to be loved. He'd just opened his car door when he heard the small voice that could stop him in his tracks faster than any business crisis. Daddy, where are we going? We didn't even get our food yet. Marcus froze. He'd almost forgotten that Emma was with him. The babysitter had cancelled last minute, and his sister had insisted the date was too important to reschedule, that this woman was perfect for him. But he needed to stop being so closed off and give someone a chance. So he brought his 7-year-old daughter along, figuring, if nothing else, it would be a short dinner. Emma would be bored. He'd have an excuse to leave early, and everyone could stop pestering him about his non-existent love life. Except now, Emma was looking up at him with those enormous dark eyes that were exactly like her mother's, and Marcus felt the familiar squeeze in his chest that came whenever he remembered that. Sophie would never see their daughter grow up. Change of plans. Princess, Marcus said, forcing brightness into his voice. How about we grab burgers instead? Emma's face scrunched in confusion. But what about the nice lady? Ms. Rachel. She was telling me about her dog, and she said she had pictures, and she was going to show me after she went to the bathroom. Marcus felt a stab of guilt. Rachel, that was her name. Rachel Morrison. Pediatric nurse. Volunteer at an animal shelter. Allegedly warm and genuine, according to his sister. But Marcus had barely listened to her during dinner, too busy noticing everything that reminded him why dating was pointless. She'd mentioned having a demanding schedule, which meant no time for a ready-made family. She'd talked about her career goals, which meant ambition that would always come first. She'd ordered a salad while Marcus and Emma got pasta, which somehow felt like a judgment on their choices. Everything about her screamed wrong fit. And Marcus had perfected the art of reading people in boardrooms and contract negotiations. He knew when something wouldn't work. She seemed nice. Daddy, Emma continued, her voice carrying that particular tone of stubbornness she'd inherited from him. You didn't talk to her very much. You kept looking at your phone like you do when Uncle James talks too long about boring stuff. Marcus winced because his daughter was absolutely right. And 7-year-olds had a devastating talent for cutting through excuses. Emma, sometimes grown-ups can just tell when things aren't going to work out. It's complicated. Emma crossed her arms, Another gesture she'd gotten from him that looked adorably defiant on her small frame. "But, Daddy, she's nice. She asked me about school and my friends, and she didn't do that fake voice that some ladies use when they talk to kids like we're stupid. And she has a dog named Biscuit, who's old and has 3 legs, and she rescued him, and she showed me a picture, and he's really cute, and she said maybe I could meet him sometime, something." In Emma's words penetrated Marcus's certainty. He replayed the dinner conversation in his mind, actually paying attention this time instead of cataloging reasons to escape. Rachel had asked Emma about her favorite subjects at school, and when Emma had launched into an elaborate explanation of her science project about volcanoes, Rachel had listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually paying attention. She'd shared a story about her dog without talking down to Emma or brushing off her enthusiasm. She'd truly laughed, when Emma had accidentally knocked over her water glass, Purity helping clean up while telling a story about once spilling an entire pot of spaghetti sauce on her kitchen ceiling to make Emma feel less embarrassed. Marcus had been so busy being defensive, so determined to find flaws and protect himself from potential disappointment, that he'd completely missed what was happening right in front of him. While he'd been building walls, Rachel had been connecting with his daughter in a way that was natural and unforced. Emma, who was usually shy around new people, learned to be cautious about women Marcus dated, because so many had pretended to like her, while really just tolerating her as an obstacle to accessing him and his wealth. Emma genuinely liked Rachel, and Emma's judgment of character was better than his had become. She's probably gone by now anyway, Marcus said, but he was wavering. Emma's face fell with disappointment, and Marcus felt like the worst father in the world. Here he was, so obsessed with protecting both of them from potential hurt, that he was actively sabotaging a chance at something good. Sophie had always called him out on this tendency, his need to control every variable, to eliminate risk, to make decisions based on logic rather than possibility. "You're going to logic your way right out of life," she'd told him once, and he'd laughed it off. But she'd been right. In the 3 years since she'd died, he'd built even higher walls, convinced that keeping Emma and himself isolated was the same as keeping them safe. Can we at least go say goodbye?" Emma asked quietly. "That would be polite, right? You always tell me we should be polite." Marcus looked at his daughter, at the hope barely concealed in her expression, and made a decision that terrified him. "You're right, princess. That would be polite. Let's go back inside." Emma's face lit up like he'd just promised her Disney World, and she grabbed his hand, pulling him back toward the restaurant entrance. Marcus let himself be led, his heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with business negotiations and everything to do with the vulnerability of opening yourself to another person. Rachel was still at the table, and Marcus noticed what he'd been too defensive to see before. She looked sad, not angry or annoyed, but genuinely sad. staring at her phone with an expression that suggested she was debating whether to call a friend to vent or just go home and cry. It was the same expression Marcus had worn countless times over the past 3 years, when another attempt at moving forward had fallen apart. She looked up when they approached, surprise and something like hope crossing her features. "I'm sorry," Marcus said before he could overthink it. "I was being an idiot. I have a habit of making snap judgments and protecting myself before anyone can disappoint me. And I did that to you, and it was unfair and rude." Rachel blinked, clearly not expecting that level of honesty. "Oh, thank you for saying that." Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Tell her the rest, Daddy." Marcus looked down at his daughter, his heart squeezing again. "The rest. Tell her that I like her, and she's nice, and you should give her a chance, because that's what Uncle James is always saying you need to do." Emma's voice carried across the nearby tables, and Marcus felt his face heat with embarrassment, even as he couldn't help smiling at his daughter's directness. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling too. "Well, I definitely like you, Emma. You're one of the coolest kids I've met, and your dad is lucky to have someone who advocates for him." Marcus pulled out his chair and sat back down, gesturing for Emma to do the same. "Can we start over? I promise to actually participate in the conversation this time." Rachel wiped her eyes and nodded. "I'd like that." And for the next 2 hours, they talked. Marcus learned that Rachel became a pediatric nurse after her younger brother survived cancer as a child, that she volunteered at the animal shelter because she believed everyone deserved a second chance, including 3-legged dogs, that she'd been just as nervous about the blind date because she'd been hurt before by men who weren't ready for real relationship. Rachel learned about Sophie's death and how Marcus had channeled his grief into work and raising Emma, about his fear of letting anyone get close enough to hurt his daughter, about his realization in the parking lot that fear was no way to live. 6 months later. Marcus stood in Rachel's backyard watching Emma throw a tennis ball for Biscuit, the 3-legged rescue dog, who retrieved it with enthusiasm that defied his physical limitations. Rachel leaned against Marcus's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her waist, marveling at how natural this felt. "I almost left that night," he said quietly. "If Emma hadn't stopped me in the parking lot, I would have driven away and never looked back." Rachel turned to look at him. "But she did stop you, and you listened. That's what matters." Marcus thought about all the closed doors, all the declined setups, all the times he'd chosen isolation over risk. And he thought about his 7-year-old daughter who'd been braver than him, who'd seen goodness he'd been too scared to recognize, who'd reminded him that sometimes the best things in life require trusting your heart instead of your defensive instincts. "You know what Emma told me last week?" Marcus said, smiling. "She said she's glad I came back inside that night, because now she has Rachel and Biscuit. And that's way better than just burgers." Rachel laughed. That genuine sound that had become one of Marcus's favorite things. "Smart kid." "The smartest," Marcus agreed. watching his daughter play with such unguarded joy. She reminded me that being nice matters more than being careful, that connection is worth the risk, and that sometimes you need to listen to the people who love you, even when you think you know better. As the sun set over the yard, painting everything in golden light, Marcus sent a silent thank you to his daughter for her wisdom, to Rachel for her patience, and to whatever force in the universe had given him a second chance when he'd almost walked away. Because sometimes the most important business decision you can make has nothing to do with business. At all, it's the decision to come back inside, to try again, to let someone be nice to you even when you're terrified. And sometimes the best advisor you'll ever have is a 7-year-old who sees the world more clearly than you do, who knows that "but Daddy, she's nice" is actually the most important evaluation you'll ever receive.